Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Records and Resources at Library and Archives Canada. My name is Kathleen McKenzie, Education and Programming Manager here at American Ancestors, and I will be moderating today's session. This program is brought to you by the Brew Family Learning Center. American Ancestors is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history, and we're pleased to offer such programming for our members and friends around the world. Our presenter today is senior genealogist Rhonda R. McClure. Rhonda is a nationally recognized professional genealogist and lecturer. Before joining American Ancestors in 2006, she ran her own genealogical business for 18 years. She was a contributing editor for Heritage Quest magazine, Biography magazine, and was a contributor to the History Channel magazine and American History magazine. In addition to numerous articles, she is the author of 12 books, including the award-winning The Complete Idiot's Guide to Online Genealogy, Finding Your Famous and Infamous Ancestors, and Digitizing Your Family History. She's also the editor of the recently released 6th edition of the Genealogist's Handbook for New England Research. Her areas of expertise include immigration and naturalization, late 19th and early 20th century urban research, New England, the Midwest, Southern, German, Italian, Scottish, Irish, of course, French Canadian, and New Brunswick research as well. So no matter what province your Canadian ancestors are from, the Library and Archives Canada in Ottawa holds a goldmine of records for family historians, both online and on site. In this presentation, Rhonda will discuss what records are available, how to use the online catalog and online research guides, and she'll walk through a case study. At any point during today's presentation, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A panel found at the bottom of your screen. We'll address as many as we can at the end. There is no syllabus for this presentation, but it is being recorded for later viewing on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you missed something on today's first listen, don't worry, you can always review the presentation later on. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Rhonda.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on Library and Archives Canada. We are going to begin by showing you kind of their main page. And the reason that I'm starting there is that we are going to, the site on which it is housed is actually their full-on government site. So in order to get to Library and Archives Canada, you do want to start with the URL that you have here. I will say that there's no handout for today, but there is a one page with all the links to the various parts that I'm going to show you that will be sent out later so that you don't have to memorize all of the links. And quite frankly, some of the links are ridiculously long. However, this is, if you want to just get to the Library and Archives Canada, to their main website, this is the URL that will get you there and bypass all the other government pages. If you scroll down about halfway through that main page, you will see under their most requested collections, the area that we're going to spend our most time with, which is genealogy and family history. And by clicking this, it's going to take you to their main page. For them, their genealogy resources are kind of broken up into these main 6 categories: census, immigration and deportation records, naturalization records, the military history, which for a lot of it is concentrating on World War I personnel and earlier stuff, records of certain types of employment, as well as ethnocultural family history. So this is the main genealogy page, and basically it is the library-archives.canada.ca/ENG/website, and then there is like 2 lines of additional URL information to get you to this main page, which is why, unfortunately, I had to shorten all of my URLs on the lecture. But as I said, they will all be in the handout that will be emailed to all of you. And so basically, you can see the kind of the 6 areas I was just talking about here in this grid right here. And we're literally just going to go through each of the 6 main areas to talk a little bit about each one of them. We are going to start off with the censuses because, let's face it, we love census. And their census records, number one, there are a variety of census records. Not all are online. They, on their website, include a really useful census guide that includes terminology to the types of censuses, abbreviations that are used in the censuses, some great search tips, and for trying to locate where a particular area might be in the later censuses, so the 1901 to 1931, there are some electoral maps that will offer you kind of a better, some help in kind of isolating where your ancestor may be residing. So before we get into some of the later censuses, which I'm super excited that we are up to the 1931, as we can see down at the bottom of this kind of chart here. So we have, this is the after Confederation. So Confederation began in 1871. So you can see that we have censuses for 71, 81, 91, 1901, 1911, 1921, and the most recently released 1931, which I am super excited to see that one for some projects that I am personally working on. They do have, so if you choose one of those censuses from that list, and you will get some information about the types of pages that they have available or were taken, and what is available as far as the population schedule, which is the one that we spend most of our time working in. And there is an actual button to search the database. One of the things that I discovered in, yes, Robin, you are correct. They, the Confederation was in 67, and the first official census for the Confederation was in 1871. You are correct about that. One of the things that I noticed with the when I was using the search options for these post-Confederation censuses, the names must be in mixed case. I was so frustrated because I'm used to just, typing in all lowercase, and I kept getting 0 hits. Now, when I click on the button that says to go to the, to do a census search, it actually takes me to a global page where I can do some determinations as to what I want to include. And so for the when, I can actually say, I want to search all census years. Usually that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us because we are looking for families in very specific time periods. So there could be, all of the pre-Confederate, there could be all of the Dominion, or the prairies, which have their own separate censuses as well. And then the next section is the who, and this is where I was typing in all lowercase and discovered I was getting no hits whatsoever. Also, they do allow for wildcards. So as you can see for the first name, I wasn't quite sure if they were using the spelling of L-A-U-R or L-A-W-R. So I put a wildcard in there to grab everything, and then I put in my last name. And I left it very, very broad, just wanted to look at the 1931 census. Scrolling further down on the website, you can say you want to search all of the provinces and territories, but most of us have a sense of what province our ancestors were residing in at a given time. In this case, I was concentrating on Nova Scotia, and I had known that the family that I was looking for in 31 had been residing in the town of Louisdale, which is in Richmond County, Nova Scotia. So under district name, I started to type Richmond, and you can see that I have typed up the RIC, and it immediately popped up the blue bar that shows me the Richmond West Cape Breton district name. From there, I was able to immediately find Lawrence Marchand here and in the 1931 census, and indeed he was residing in the Richmond West Cape Breton area. He's age 57. I did actually know that this was my individual. So you can either click on the name or you can click on the image, and that will take you to the page. And here we can see that I have put a bracket around the family of Lawrence, his wife, and all of his little kidlets, and we get information on them. There are some buttons down at the bottom that do allow me to print, save, or to enlarge the screen as well. However, one of the things that I find that I return to frequently, and I've been doing it for many, many, many years, is a kind of almost, it used to be a kind of like a finding aid page, but it was dedicated to the early censuses that all of the different provinces have had over the years. And now they have an actual page that has like search functions and filter options, but it is the early census and related documents 1640 to 1945. Now, in this particular screen, you can see I have put a red box around the filter options. Most often, we are going to probably focus on a particular region or maybe even a census type. You may want to know if it is physically online or not. But also to the right of that, you'll see that I have underlined how many entries they have for censuses for this time period, for the quote, early census and related documents. There's really 271 entries. Yes, you can go through all of them. Usually, though, we are going to want to focus on a very, very specific, like I said, region, time period, etc. As a result, in this instance, for this example, I decided to choose Ontario, and the filter then gave me once I had done that and selected that, it updates my list of individuals, or individual entries, I should say, not people. And here we see a very interesting related document, not necessarily a census per se, but there is some muster rolls, provisioning lists, and returns of refugee loyalists from 1719 to 1785. And for many of us who have done research and have individuals who came over pre-American Revolution, yes, we have some who went north to Canada because they were loyalists. They did not believe in what the Patriots were attempting to do. Now, one of the things that you can do with this is that if you see under the transcript here, there is a microfilm C-1475 that I've highlighted with that big red arrow. This indicates that there is a transcript that is available online. And by clicking on that, it's going to take, excuse me, it's going to take me to a viewer. And this is going to actually take me to another section of the Archives, Library and Archives Canada. It's a heritage, what they've got as heritagecanadiana.ca, which is actually Canadiana Heritage, which is their digital viewing site. So if things are digitally available, they are often on this particular site. This may be where you are directed to if you were to reach out to the staff of Library and Archives Canada looking for something that they know has been made available online. One of the things though that you will have to pay close attention to is that in this particular example, we have the Loyalist volumes, which again, This is an index to specific volumes, so it's a transcript of the people. And you'll see that down at the bottom in very tiny text, it says there are 1,325 images, 0 with full text search. So what does this tell us? It tells us that we're going to have to go through the images. Now, because it's an index, obviously those are going to be in alphabetically arranged. So you'll be able to look at the very top left-hand side where it says image 4, and there's a little up and down arrow there. You can actually pull that down. And, if you're towards the end of the alphabet, you can go, quite a few images down and see where that puts you, etc. We are now going to move on to immigration and deportation. And under their immigration and deportation page, they focus on passenger lists, deportation. They have an entire link to the home children, which we will talk about in a moment. And then they also talk some about passports. There's a lot of other items that are maybe they tell you something about them, but they don't give you much in the way of resources. And in large part, that's because of when some of these items were begun and their privacy laws that may keep us from being able to access certain things. So on the immigration records page, this is at the very, very top of the page, and you will see that they have on this page, before you start, places to look, abbreviations and terminology, access the records, and related records. And so there's a lot of great stuff about understanding before you start what may, what you may need to search before you get into the immigration records, and the page continues on. Many of the passenger lists that are found in Library and Archives Canada Immigration Guide are online. However, keep in mind that there are no comprehensive collections of passenger lists before 1865. So if you are looking for somebody who came over before that time period, you are probably out of luck. You are going to definitely want to use the guide that they include to investigate collections you perhaps didn't know about. For instance, you'll see here that they have a number under records of arrival. They have a number of different, the passenger list to 1935, border entry records. So these are going to be people coming from the US into Canada that were begun in 1908, immigration records after 1935. Most of those, of course, are not going to be available to us because of privacy laws. And then there is this other records relating to arrivals. Clicking on that, gives me a number of different record groups. You'll see two of them here, the Department of Agriculture Record Group 17 and Department of the Interior Record Group 15. As with most archives, the classification of how they arrange their collections are done by what are known as record groups. So, anything dealing under the Department of Agriculture is probably going to be housed under the record group 17, and then there may be obviously some subset identifiers. One of the things that they do tell you for working with these is for searching the types of government records that are available here is to go to the collection search. And I'll be honest with you, the very, very first time that I tried to do this, I clicked on collection search, and of course it takes me off to another page. And so I actually kept this page open as a separate window on my computer, and then launched a new window for the collection search page so that I could follow the directions that they were supplying me here to ensure that I actually got to what I was looking for. And in this particular case, I did go to that advanced search, and I put in immigrant settler because I was looking for immigrants. And one of the things that it had specified in the directions was that I changed the database from everything to collections and funds. And that's all that I did within the advanced search. And then I basically said, give me what you got. And you'll see that when the collection results is displayed, there are a few different tabs at the very top. So you can get everything. You can get, things that are specifically in the archives, things that have been categorized as useful for genealogy, library things, images, and so on. But you can also, on the left hand, limit things further. So I can limit by dates. I can limit by, there's available online. If any of these items were available online, there would be a yes with a number in parentheses as well. In this particular instance, I did click on Mary Mantle, in large part because I was curious to see what this was coming from. So in our original entry for her, we basically were told not a lot. We were told Mary Mantle, immigrants before 1865, genealogy, immigration, citizenship. So they had cataloged it and they had given us a reference, and they told us that her year of immigration was 1823. When I clicked on the link, even though I knew it wasn't going to take me to an actual record, what I got as I opened up the two bars, so you'll see that record information brief and record information details have little down arrows. And so they are the second one. The detailed one is often closed when you first get here. So definitely open that up, because that's going to give you some additional information beyond what we were told originally. So the brief tells me my reference. If I were going to, since this is not online, if I was going to reach out to Library and Archives Canada to request a copy service option, I would need everything that you see below Mary's name in that reference to help them to find what I needed and get me the copy I was asking for. However, in the record information details, in addition to year of immigration, we also see the overall fund this is in, which is the immigration original correspondence, and then the record title, list of immigrant settlers from the south of Ireland embarked on board of the Slaxby, transport for passage to Quebec, Cove of Cork, 8 July 1823. So there, right away I have a full date. I have a name of a ship. I also have some identification of where these people were coming from out of Ireland. So even with just getting some details, I have a better idea of whether or not this is something that I, could be of more use to me and that I may want to reach out to them and ask about. One of the other areas that I did concentrate on, in large part because it is such a, it's a big part of Canadian history, is what was known as the home children. So here in the United States, we have the orphan trains that, took a lot of urchins and orphans and poor children out of, the big cities like in New York and sent them west to the various additional states. Similar situation happened with children, poor and or orphan children who were in the British Isles, that were in maybe they were in the almshouse, maybe they were in an orphanage. And so there were a couple of different people who came up with child migration schemes to move these individuals to other places, including Canada, Australia, some of the other areas that, the UK still had their connections to. And more than 100,000 children got sent to Canada. And here you see a little boy who's plowing. He's actually plowing at what was known as Dr. Bernardo's industrial farm in Russell, Manitoba in 1900. And sometimes you will hear, instead of home children, you will hear Bernardo's children, because it was such a synonymous, you know, name, because he was heavily involved. He had his homes back in the UK, and they were sending their kids to Canada, ostensibly to have a better life. Now, there is an entire section devoted to the home children records, including an ability to search a database of these records that cover between 1869 and the late 1930s. So I just went ahead and put something simple. I did not use our more traditional Smith, SMITH. I thought I would go a little bit different. I could have used the wild cards, but I went with this just to see what we would get for hits. You could fill out all of these items, keywords, codes, ship, whatever. Just keep in mind, the more that you're playing around with some of these databases, the less is still best. So in this case, I just started out with a surname, and I found that I had 14 individuals. Not all of these are necessarily going to be people who were on physical ships that were arriving. And so I chose one of the individuals who did not have a ship, nor did she have a year of arrival. I selected Violetta Smith. And when I opened that up, I found information about her, Violetta Smith, that they said she's a boy, she's really a girl, where she was sent from. So now I know what home she was in back in the UK, her place of first settlement, and then what was it that she was, the record that she's actually mentioned in this instance. It said total number of pages in this file is 13, and that there is it's not available on microfilm, that it's part of the Department of Agricultural Record Group 17 records. And in this instance, because it is not online, I would have to request a copy of her entry from the service options that are available through Library and Archives Canada. So here we have the ordering of copies. So under the, how to access the records or obtain copies, they have a great detailed item, which includes, the entries with references for the record group 17. These original documents do require either you going to Library and Archives Canada and or using their copy service. Copy service, they automatically tell you, is going to be upwards of 30 days for a turnaround time, but there is a way to order things through that you see that are not available online. In doing that, there are certain items that you absolutely must have information. And so the items that you need from the database search to supply into the form for requesting the copy are the ones that you see on the left here in our table. Title of the record, this happens to be the Report of Inspection of Pauper Children in 1884. There was no page number given. The file number was 42584. There was no issue number. Volume number was 395. Again, microfilm reel number, it said it wasn't available on microfilm, so I would automatically supply that information to the on the form, and then the reference and source, so that I can, so those are the fields that you're going to fill out on a form. And to get to your form, the first thing you're going to do is to determine what type of material you want. This happened to be text documents, which would be most of what we as genealogists are looking for, but you can see that they have things identified in other categories, so that if you want a video or a sound recording and so on, you could also request those if that's what came up in your search. Passports were not very common before World War One. And to be honest, there aren't a whole lot that the government nor the Library and Archives Canada has. There may be a smattering that were donated through private papers that have been donated to Libraries and Archive Canada. However, between 1891 and 1920, the Canadian government did keep 130 sample files that are related to passports issued in this time frame, so that you can get a sense of the type of information that comes from them. If you have some Russian immigrants, there's a really great passport file, the Likachev Agassiz Mathers collection, that does actually give us some information. So once again, I went to the collection search. In this case, for the keyword, you may want to start by using the country from which your ancestors were coming from. And then under the database, be sure and select immigrants from the Russian Empire, 1898 to 1922. This will show you, so in this case, there were 9 items that had to do with the keyword of Lithuania, and each one of them allows for me to click on it and to view the file. So when you click on it, in my case, it did default to this second of the 3 items. Again, these are going to be found on that Canadiana Heritage site. So it's going to take you right there. And like I said, for whatever reason, it did default to this middle item, which is the main part of the letter. The first item is more of a folder with identifying information on it. But in this case, this is somebody who was writing for a new passport. And because they were writing for it in 1918, they were giving a whole bunch of information talking about where they came from, that they first came to the United States, and that they were 9, and where they were part of, and so on. And so as a result, even if you're not looking at the actual passport, if you have Russian immigrants who came to Canada, what you may find is somebody requesting a new passport that gives you critical information about where they were coming from in the old country. Citizenship and naturalization is another huge record source that we as genealogists often turn to. So the main collections that Library and Archives Canada has put up on their page having to do with immigration and naturalization are these 3 that you see here: citizenship registration records 1851 to 1945 for the Montreal Circuit Court, naturalization lists 1915 to 1951, and naturalization records 1828 to 1850 for Upper Canada and Canada West. Once again, I did a search in the database. And in this case, again, I just went with Esposito as a last name. I know that there are some Espositos that did emigrate and naturalize, so I just thought I would see what I got. And in this instance, there was, I don't know, about 8 of them, I think, that were listed in the list. I just happened to choose Antonio for an example for today's lecture. And in addition to giving me his name, his surname, his country, I have a year, I have a page, there's a reference, which in this case was the Canada Gazette, 1927 to 1928. And you will see where the red arrow is that there is a link to a PDF file. And what this does is it downloads the image that you see here as a PDF, and will, then if you click it, it'll open up as, if you have Adobe or Adobe, Acrobat Reader or whatever. And here we have Antonio, and the reason that, I had like 8 Espositos all at once is because they're alphabetically arranged here. But I have put a box around Antonio Esposito and his wife, Rosie. And bonus for Rosie, we actually got her maiden name in parentheses, Kamada. Antonio took his oath of allegiance 12 December 1927, and this indicates the whole page also tells us that he's a carpenter and that he resides in Montreal. So one of the things you can see here is that this list of aliens were from all over by this time, because of course we're after Confederation, and we are now also at a time frame when you are doing your naturalization to Canada, not just to the British Empire. Couple of things to keep in mind when you are searching for citizenship. Just like in the United States, there are some rules about women and children. So prior to 1932, a married woman had the same citizenship status as their husband. So if he has become a British subject, she automatically becomes a British subject. If he is not a British subject, then she will be an alien. Now, this could be because she herself is an alien who emigrated, or she could have been a Canadian who married an alien, and now she has lost her British, citizenship. Once he becomes naturalized, then she automatically then takes on his British subject status. Also, prior to 1915, any alien minor children will become British subjects through the parent at the time, which is generally their father, or if their widowed mother became naturalized. After 1915, there are a variety of different rules as to apply to certain situations with the minor children. If you had a question about that specifically, I would have to dig into all of the different rules. We're going to take a look now at they call it military history, in large part because it covers a lot of different types of military, but I often think of it again in terms of military records. Now, not surprisingly, a lot of their databases focus on the Canadian Expeditionary Forces. That is the personal records of their soldiers, nurses, and chaplains, etc. And the database is available and searchable on the Library and Archives website. So I did do a similar database search. In this case, I did for McClure, and I also did a wildcard for that surname because it can sometimes be MC or it can also be MAC. So I put a wildcard between my M and my C, and that accommodated both if there were double C's, or if it was just MCL, it would also include them as well. So I was able to then click on, in this case, James, who was my person of interest, and look at his. There are also, you will see all of these other subsets. So the personnel records of the First World War is the database. All of the things below it are predominantly textual records only. So while you may find something in there that is of interest to you, it will not be online. One area that I did find was this wonderful collection, and it's arranged again in groups. So in this case, this one that I'm showing you is page 3 of 974 images, and the surnames go from Aaron to Alan. So there are links for each of the subsets of surnames. So you would first start by clicking the one that works for your ancestor's surname, and then you would just have to work your way through until you found your, where that surname starts, and then look for your person. Again, once you have done that, you can download the PDF of whatever image you are viewing. All right, so we are going to look at a case study really quickly here. Martin Balthazar, it should be Diet. I have a typo there. It should be DIT, Saint Martin. And this was actually a request or a question that was brought to me from somebody who attended one of our virtual get-togethers that we have been doing the last few years since COVID hit. But he was born in 1737. He died in 1797. He arrived in New France in 1759 as part of the Regiment Languedoc. He married at Saint-Denis de Richelieu in 1761 to Marie Marguerite Joubert. And in 1760, he was hospitalized at l'Hôtel Dieu in Montreal. Now, the place that this information came from was on this website here, Plains of Abraham, and it has a searchable database for battles of individuals between the 1750s, 1760s, which allows us to do a search. As we scroll down on that particular page, we get this sort of, open box, and you can type in something, or you can go to the advanced search as well. In this case, because I knew I was looking for Balthazar, as a surname, I just thought I'd put that in and see who popped up. And I did a search. And I got 2 results back, and the top one was the Martin Balthazar Saint Martin, who was the person that I was most interested in. And you'll see that there is a soldier's information hot link below where it identifies him as being part of the French army. Everything that was known about him came sort of from this web page. So his birth year, the death year, I did condense some of his information. However, who he married and his connection to the hospital. Because as we scrolled down on the page, we saw his hospitalization identified as being in Hôtel Dieu in Montreal at, on the 30th of August, 1760. So I went back to Library and Archives Canada. I did a search for l'Hôtel Dieu, and I hit the search. Among other things, I had all sorts of results, including, 1,682 results. Obviously, I wanted to cut that down some. So I went to the date, and I got that down to the 1750s, 60s, I think. Oh, 1650, my mistake. One century off. And so you'll see here that because the time frame overlapped 1659 to 60, I was like, okay, we're just going to go and see what pops up. And here is an example of, yes, I have said, give me the archives. The dates I have now narrowed down, and you'll see below the dates that it says what's available online and what isn't. And so as we were looking at the original textual documents, I get all of the information about the large collection that covers this time period. And unfortunately, there's no finding aid. And at this point, I was thinking, that I was probably going to have to possibly reach out to the Library and Archives Canada to see if I could get a copy of the page. However, I returned back to our main list, and I found that there was one that said that they were online. So where were these records? Well, the originals, based on my detailed entry, said that the originals were housed in Quebec, but they also had these records at Library and Archives Canada. Could they photo duplicate? I did actually email them to find out. And this is where I was told that there was an online version. And it is at the Canadiana Heritage website, where they have an entire genealogy section. which consists of 237 total collections that are available. And you'll notice that in the Refine Your Search, I went ahead and typed in again, L'Hôtel Dieu. And I had two hits. The first was Fonds de l'Hôtel Dieu de Quebec, and the second had to do with a seminary. Obviously, the one that I wanted was this first. Also, when the Library and Archives Canada had written back to me, they told me that the entry I needed was specifically going to be on the microfilm C-14017, because the whole collection is on 3 microfilm reels that have been digitized. Of course, this whole section is consists of 1,768 images, none of which I can type a name in and look for. And so one of the things that is going to have to happen is that I'm going to have to be creative as I am going through these images to see how this collection is laid out. When it comes to searching on the collection search on Libraries and Archive Canada, be creative. Another thing that I was looking for or interested in was searching the collections, and I felt like I wanted to search terms of hospital immigrants. I wanted them to be in the archives, and I said, give me what's available online. I also further limited that to just textual material because there were a lot of photographs of like nurses and doctors and whatnot working at immigrant hospitals, and I resulted in 13 hits. As I was going through these 13 hits, I found these rather odd entries here for script affidavits for a Mary Jane McDougall, Annie Goulet, and Marguerite Connolly, all of whom were nuns associated with the General Hospital at St. Boniface. And I was curious, how was a nun having to do, yes, there was hospital, but what was popping up here? And this is one of those situations where, as an individual, a lot of the collections are not searchable by name. Now, in this particular one, we do have names for these 3 records. However, it's possible that by combining something like hospital and immigrant, or immigrant, depending on how you're searching, may reveal other resources that might be of interest or help you. I clicked on the context of this record, which is a great way for understanding the hierarchy of these particular types of resources. And so here we have the individual item, the script affidavit for Mary Jane McDougall. It's part of the Métis and Original White Settlers affidavits, which is part of Dominion Lands branch, which is part of the Department of Interior Funds. So if you ever find something that you're like, why is this coming up? I need to know more. Click that context of the record to see where it falls in from largest to smallest, because this is going to also help you understand how things are being cataloged. In looking at this particular item, what I discovered was that Mary Jane McDougall was born of a Scottish father and a Métis mother, who was in this document listed as a half-breed, and it indicated the where and when Mary Jane McDougall was born. So we had information because she was born in like 1844. This is not a time that we may have necessarily been able to have birth records in the province of Manitoba. So this is huge. Also, the document itself was dated in 1875, and that it was a claim to participate in the allotment and distribution of 1.4 million acres that were set aside for half-breed children. She also states in her affidavit that at the time of, there was a specific date of this this particular affidavit that was dated the 15th day of July, 1870. In other words, this was when they were establishing some connection, and that she indicated that her parents had died in the parish of St. Boniface, Selkirk County, Manitoba, by that point. So by the 15th day of July, 1870. So quick review, many of the records are housed at Library and Archives Canada. And by that, I mean original documents that you're going to have to go and physically visit and touch. Some of them may be digitally available on Canadiana Heritage. Many more are only available either by requesting photo duplication or by visiting the actual institution itself in Ottawa. So you have to be patient, you have to be determined. And yes, these are, there's a lot of old school image by image kind of searching to find things in what is digitized and or making a plan and going to Ottawa to use resources physically in their building.
Great. Thank you so much, Rhonda. We will be turning to all of your questions in just a moment. But before we do that, I did just want to highlight a few upcoming events that we have. So I, of course, wanted to start with our Canadian Research Tour, which is taking place in May, that might be of interest to a lot of you. This is going to be a great tour. We're going to spend time, of course, at Library and Archives Canada. We'll also make trips to the Military History Research Centre there and to the Ottawa branch of the Ontario Genealogical Society. These tours are always really great. It allows participants to travel to these repositories with the support of our genealogists. Rhonda is going to be one of the tour leaders for this trip, as well as our chief genealogist, David Allen Lambert. They'll be offering one-on-one consultations, lectures, and just kind of general support and camaraderie for your research throughout the week. You can find the full itinerary for this tour on our website, and please do feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about it. And I'll just kind of breeze through these other events that are coming up a little bit quicker that you might be interested in. So starting this month, we have a free online seminar on getting started in African American family history research. That'll be on February 24th, which is a Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's a full day program presented by Cynthia Evans, Danielle Rose, and Jonathan Hill. Then on the 26th, we have an American Inspiration author event with the author Ilan Wu and her book Master, Slave, Husband, Wife, An Epic Journey from Slavery to Freedom. This event will be moderated by Peggy Trotter-Damond. And then finally, beginning on February 28th and continuing throughout the month of March, we have an online seminar using Irish land records in your family history research. Rhonda will be one of our presenters for that program, as well as our genealogists Shayla Dorfler, Judy Lucy, Melanie McComb, and Eileen Curley-Peranti. You can learn more about these and all of our upcoming events at americanancestors.org/events. All right, so now let's go ahead and turn to your questions. So first, Rhonda, I wanted to ask, because I saw we had a few people asking if you could define what fawns are.
So fawns is basically their word for basically like pages. And the manner in which they've been arranged. So if we were at the National Archives in DC, they would consider those maybe to be case files or something, depending on the collection. So think in terms of collections of paper that have been arranged in some manner.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then we also had a question here. Does the census search function have a fuzzy search approach, or does it only bring back exact matches?
Which search is this again?
The census search.
So the census search, you can use wildcards. That was the one thing that I did find. But like I said, when I was doing the census search, the bigger thing is that you have to use mixed case. But I think that for most situations, if you use the wildcard, you would be okay.
Okay, great. Then we had a question here. Someone says, my ancestors' vital records are online, but they're in French and handwritten, so very hard for me to read and understand. Do you have any suggestions for how to make sense of them or how to maybe reach out to a translator or something like that?
What I would suggest is, I mean, yes, you could certainly hire a translator. You might try going to familysearch.org and searching their wiki for French genealogical word list. That often has a lot of the words that we are used to using. It also offers some structure of, yes, they spell out the entire year, the day, and then the month, as the opener for a particular record and so on. So it gives you some guidance there. That would be my go-to to start with. But if you are really, really struggling, you may want to seek out somebody you could hire to go through them.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rhonda. Another question here. Are there any options for help with immigration to Canada in the 1840s and before?
As far as like if they're coming from, like, say, across the Atlantic, there is that collection that we were looking at for Mary Mantle that was for immigrants before 1865. That would probably be one of the first things I would try, looking for my ancestors.
All right, great. Thank you. And then we had a couple of questions about, is there a source for border entry from Canada to the US at various border entry points to the US?
So yes, the reverse actually started earlier. It started from Canada into the US is actually a US document, and it began in 1895. You can find that database on ancestry.com.
Okay, perfect. And then a couple of questions about the naturalization rules. So one that came in was, in the naturalization rules, did children born in Canada to aliens become automatically Canadian citizens, or did the parents need to take action to naturalize their children?
So in the slide that I talked about naturalizations, I did mention that prior to 1915, minor alien children, in other words, the children who were born in the other country who were brought with their parents, were automatically naturalized when dad did it, or if their widowed mother became the naturalized person, then they were automatically quote grandfathered in. They automatically became citizens. After 1915, there are a few situations that can that affect that. And so if you do have somebody after 1915, I would probably ask you to email us, and we could then maybe look into it in detail, and I could give you a better answer. So before 1915, yes, they automatically. After 1915, they may have or they may not have.
Okay, great. Um, then we have a question here asking if the Quebec records held at, uh, sorry, I'm going to butcher this French here. Let's see. Are Quebec records held at Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales du Québec distinct, or are some records duplicated at Libraries National? Sorry, do you understand what I'm saying, Ron?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
So Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales de Québec is Montreal is like Quebec's provincial archive. Every province has their own archive. So yes, they have tons of things like notarial records, which are basically their legal records. We have courthouses here; they have notaries up there. They have tons of things that are specific to the founding of, and the ongoing life of Nouvelle France. So if you may find yourself going there for certain things, also, there's any number of things. They have their own separate catalog and so on. What's great about the Library and Archives Canada is the fact that they will tell you if something's on microfilm, they may have acquired it from the provincial archives in Quebec, and or somehow, a lot of those things. There are, the Library and Archives in Canada in Ottawa is the Canadian archives. So for all of the provinces and have things from each province or that pertain to the provinces. Each individual province has their own provincial archive, and they have obviously things that just pertain to their province, similar to the National Archives here versus state archives for all of our individual states. So there is overlap. The good news, though, is that they will tell you in the source where the records are. So if you see Library and Archives Canada, then that's where those records are. In the case of the one record that I called attention to, the records were actually, the source was in Quebec. So always look at the source to see where they're saying the originals are.
All right, great. Thank you, Rhonda, for that great answer to my poorly asked question. um, so I think we have about time for just one more before we conclude for today. So another question here, Rhonda. My ancestors came to Canada from England in the mid-1850s. Since they were already British citizens, would they have needed to become naturalized?
No, they would not have needed to become naturalized because they are British citizens. And so, yeah, this is my example of why they don't have to do anything is that it is like going from Massachusetts to Connecticut. There's just a whole lot of water in the way. So they, if they were a British citizen back in, Great Britain, or under the UK, they are considered a citizen, especially in that time as they land in Canada.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for that great program today. I do also want to mention, Rhonda mentioned this at the start, but she did prepare kind of a handout with links and things like that that we will be including in the follow-up email. So check your email later on this evening for that. And it will also have the link to today's recording as well. So unfortunately, that is all that we have time for today. But if you do have more specific questions about your family history research, you might consider hiring our research services team or using our expanded chat service. The chat service puts you in direct communication with a genealogist. It's free and open to the public Monday through Saturday from 9 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I highly recommend checking that out. It would be a great place to ask any questions that we didn't get to today. And to access that service, you can simply go to americanancestors.org/chat. Thank you again for joining us. And as you leave the event, you'll have an opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of our members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American Ancestors to help keep these programs free and to create more free programs for you and others. If you'd like to access more how-to resources or learn about upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center at americanancestors.org. Best of luck in your research, and I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Goodbye for now.